intro pretty quick because we are kind of packed on time, and I want to give our guests the full time to talk because it's a very important topic that's going to be affecting our city very much, and it's some important information that you need.
We're going to allow the candidates today, because this is their last go around with us, to put it out what it is that they need to say. And if you have an important question you want to ask, do call in and we'll take that. And without any further ado, I just want to say, hey, welcome, Michael. Glad to have you back. And I'm glad to be in studio this time while we have you.
Indeed, and indeed. Thank you so much for the opportunity. We're excited to be here.
That's how we do it here.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how we do it. And, so with that said, I'm going to turn the mic over to you, and you can take it away.
Well, we do definitely want it to be a conversation, and Austin, I'll tell you, is a champion at doing that, as are you, Mr. Anderson. And I've had the honor of participating in a mayoral forum over at the Meriwether Library, and then talking to so many folks. And I just have to open by saying that, I've been doing a lot of my petitioning here on the east side of Buffalo, where I've been living and working for the last 20 years. And it has been the honor of my life to go out and meet people and meet our residents and be on front porches and talk to people at Tops Market and hear their stories. I think what's most touching to me and what has been most profound over the last 5 weeks of petitioning is, and I've petitioned all over the city. I've been in North Buffalo, I've been on the west side, I've been a little bit in South Buffalo, but on the east side, when you talk to folks, right, they immediately, I always open with the same thing. Hi, I'm Michael. I'm running to be your next mayor, and I live and work here on the east side of Buffalo. And instantly, people are captivated by the conversation. You'll see people pull their carts over to the side at Tops Market, or people come to the door and hang out with you on the porch and talk to you about their concerns. And I think it's so amazing because this is a community that largely has been neglected for so long. Right? It is a community that's been exploited. When you look at what happened on the Kensington Expressway, it's been a community that's been traumatized. If you look at what happened at the Tops Market, and despite all of that, the neglect, the trauma, all of those experiences, people still are hopeful. They're still engaged, and they still want to believe that there can be positive change in their city and in their community. And I feel so grateful to hear the stories, and the stories have been profound. I met Corey on the front porch of his Florida, off the streets of Florida, to hear about his story as an exonerated man back in 2017, or Lavetta, who wants to start a nutrition and educational program out of a house in her community, or young people all over that are just hungry for an opportunity to be mentored or trained, to get a step up, and to educators who feel like our educational system really needs to be doing better for our young people. I talk a lot about the need for mentoring and apprenticeship programs in our neighborhood, specifically for our underemployed and out-of-school youth. But also just a shifted focus in our schools towards more technical training and programs. I mean, our educational programming has shifted to being almost strictly academically focused. And we have all kinds of learning styles of young people in our schools. And our schools are really failing on young people that learn differently, that are more kinesthetic, that use their hands, that want to build or take things apart or do all of this stuff. And because our school isn't meeting all of those learning styles, right? A lot of people don't find it relevant and meaningful, and they end up leaving the school system. Or we have chronic absenteeism, or we have chronic truism, or people are acting out and misbehaving in schools because it's not relevant and meaningful to their lives. So there's a whole bunch of things that we got to talk about. But it's just been incredible opportunity to be out there every day, and that's why I so embrace and support and appreciate the petitioning process, because it gets you into the community, on front porches, at the grocery store, on the streets, talking to people and finding out what's most important to them.
We've been joined by Murray. Come in silent, quiet.
Yeah.
He's there like a little butterfly.
Yeah, I'm just sitting over here, helping out the captain today.
Yeah.
Austin is driving the ship on the Jim Anderson show, and I'm hearing you talk about a lot of things that's relevant with our youth and petitions as well. But it is what it is. I mean, you running for mayor, you got a real big thing that you're talking about, the 33 project. Schools. I don't know how you mix the thing with the school with the mayorship, because they got their own money, they got their own way of doing business, and I don't know how would you affect that process.
Can I talk
in the
about
short
that?
version? In the short version.
Yeah. The short version is
yes.
The short version is that as the mayor,
Mhm.
right, it's a pedestal, and you are speaking from a podium, and you are directing the vision and the focus of your city and of your region. And I think that is a big part of the role of the mayor. It is to be leading from the front.
So the educational
anticipating problems, right? Anticipating and setting a narrative for where we should be focusing. All right. And then encouraging and engaging and mobilizing people that can run for the school board, right?
Wow.
Identifying people that will be in that leadership
So we just
position.
had a new school board. We
Yes,
just
sir.
had a lot of folks that just new people are on the school board right now. The people was there now lost their positions. So that's there already. It just had not had the opportunity to show what it's successful it could be. Evan Hart and others that's on that panel now, that our youth went to the forums at Mount Olive to see who are these people that's going to be transitioning or taking that place. So I get that part. I wouldn't focus so much on there, but I can focus on this right here. Donald Trump says right now that education is going back to the states. How do you feel about that?
Well, again, I mean, you just said I don't have a lot of control over it, but but local control. I'm supportive of local control of elections. I think, or local control of our education system, and the big reason why is because curriculum has become
federal dollars to hold it over.
Has become very homogenized, right? It's become very vanilla. And I think that we do need to account for differences in different communities and different needs and different economies. And I think that we need to support and focus and train our young people to reflect that. I think that there's a lot of really creative, innovative educators that feel stifled by a very homogenous national curriculum. And that if we give teachers more freedom and more say in how they teach and not necessarily what, we can still have the same standards. Standards are a good thing, right? They give us benchmarks.
The concept of the president putting it back into the state's hands and not the federal level. Because I just went to BCAP, took our youth over to BCAP on Sycamore Street. And the programs they have there is entrenched still with the Buffalo Public School System and with your health sciences and all the charter schools. And it was just a good platform for it. But when you say the president says, I'm going to put this back in the state's hands, this is what you're talking about a little bit when you say in the city of Buffalo going to deal with the Board of Education.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some really innovative programs come out of local cities and states. And I think that the closer we can bring education to the community and to the educators and to the school boards, the better. All right. When we're setting specific federal mandates up here, right, it's basically creating this assumption that all kids, learn, and have the exact same needs. And that's just not the case.
No.
And I feel like there is a lot of empowerment that comes with teachers having more say and administrators having more say. I had the great privilege to help start schools in Massachusetts and to be mentored by incredible folks that have started mentoring programs in the city of Providence that are getting young people in the community, teaching them relevant skills, giving them positive mentoring and educating experiences. And these are the types of ideas that breathe new life into our schools and give our kids hope that that there's different ways to learn and different pathways other than just going to college, And I think that we need to embrace as a community and as a culture the fact that all learning styles are valued, that it's not just about academic track folks that are important. It's our electricians and the plumbers and the people that care for our roads and the people that care for our elderly. And you don't need to do college education work to do that. You can get trained in a specific field and you can still bring your heart and your skills and your capacity and your compassion to the community and contribute in a meaningful way. We've done this where we've segregated, importance and value. Meaning that if you go to college, you're valued, but if you don't go to college, you're not.
Right.
And we need to value all people and all of those skills that they bring to the table. And our education system needs to reflect that. And I think that as educators or as an educational institution, we've fallen short there. And I think that we can
you're
set a new
absolutely
standard.
right. Go ahead.
As I said, I definitely agree, especially even like the work that I do in kind of the manufacturing energy production space. It's where a lot of the money is in the Western New York area, and there's a big need in this area for that type of work. And I do agree that maybe not to say a blanket statement that that saying that, okay, all education go to states and then there's no standards. I'm not saying that blanket statement is necessarily safe to say either. I don't think you are either, but I do absolutely think that based on your region and your area and where the jobs and availabilities are, I don't need people educated and broke. I need people educated in positions. So I think that it does make sense to kind of cater, kind of just looking at, again, the individual student themselves, but also the resource and opportunities available. Because if you want to stay in Buffalo, there's certain degrees that you probably just shouldn't get. And that's just a young person myself saying that, just because there's no jobs here in that field. So I'm saying that to say I don't want to pull the conversation away from education.
But can we transition real quick to something local? Because this is something that I've also discovered out on the field, going door to door, is that, everybody's saying, we've got these immense challenges in Buffalo, right? We've got, obviously concentrated poverty, and we have, a budget crisis, and we have all these issues. Like, how do you, think that you can solve problems? How do we address all of the needs of this community? And I tell people every day, we do it by looking inside. I've operated in Buffalo for the last 20 years. I don't look to government to solve our problems, right? But I do think that government should help enable people with good ideas and energy to do the things that they want to do. We have immense resources here as a city, and they're underutilized. We have thousands of acres of vacant land in our city that's underutilized. And you can just look to Detroit and see some of the things that they've done. Amazing gardens and growing, where people are being entrepreneurial.
So
and
we
people are
always
supporting
put
themselves.
gardens in place.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about human potential.
Don't you have property, right?
Yes, sir.
Because I remember we had this conversation before. And on Jefferson Avenue.
No, I don't have any problem.
Well, I think you were tilling up the land over
there. Yeah. We have
now. Who
leases,
owns that property?
Private landowners.
See, that's what I'm saying.
The city doesn't want to have anything to do with that kind of thing, and that's exactly the point I'm getting to, Murray.
Right.
Which is the city government has the capacity to help enable these good ideas.
So private
help
land,
get young people.
Here we are, Mike, and I'm coming to the point because Jim Anderson showing the shake-up part I'm trying to get to is that since 514. I have not seen a shovel put in the ground where you till that, right? And you said you want growth to be happening in the community. So those private investors that you have, what are they going to do? Are they waiting on the big pot to get paid or for the land, or are they going to develop something under your plan or having your connect to say what we're going to do? I'm just going there.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great question.
Yes.
And I think there's challenges. I mean, there's many challenges. I'm going to get to that question in just a second, but I want to wrap up my thought, which is bringing it back to human potential. And what I've learned in going door to door is that there are amazing community resources. I met a gentleman yesterday or on Sunday at the Aldi, the first African-American to swim across the English Channel. you know,
Charlie
and
the Tuna.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
You know
right. The
him.
tuna. Yeah,
You know him.
exactly.
You know him.
So it was an extraordinary conversation because not because of his history, although that's phenomenal,
And
right?
the trials and tribulations he went
But
through.
because of what he wants to do now. You know, he told me, he's like, I just want to teach young people swimming. I just want to get, so like, we gotta be leveraging that. You know, I just found out that the YMCA on Delaware is closing, which is going to leave only one YMCA, one last YMCA in the city of Buffalo. You got to pay in. It brings up the importance of community centers and connections and playgrounds and green spaces and how they weave together a web
but the
of community and support.
Had a swimming pool too, and they're not utilizing swimming. So we gonna call a spade a spade. We gonna make sure we gonna put everybody on the line. The resource center was the YMCA on East Ferry Street that a private company came into, and all of a sudden now the swimming pool is not open. You got to go through there. So I'm saying we got a lot of gentrification happening in our community amongst ourselves that we're not talking about. So as mayor, I mean, what would you do? Build more community centers with swimming pools, not just swimming pools, but with hockey rinks, all that stuff in there.
I want to come back to this point that I keep touching on, because immediately when people see that it doesn't exist, they want to say, let's build more, like housing. They think that we have a housing crisis, we need to build more. But really what we got to do is look at what we have, right? On my street alone, from Jefferson to Main Street, there are 12 vacant houses that are sitting vacant, that have been vacant for 18 years. Wow. All right. They've been vacant for 18 years. They pay their taxes. They pay their user fees. There's no consequence for sitting on that vacant property and not developing it. And many of those are owned by people out of town. That's an unacceptable condition for our communities. We're not going to let these vacant properties sit vacant without there being a penalty. We're going to raise revenue. We're going to tax out-of-state landowners for having vacant properties.
But we don't get the money, though.
And we're going to get, we'll help them connect with resources.
Why we don't exist? Domain the property, and now we can put it out.
That's another whole conversation. But I'm coming back to my point of like looking at the existing resources. We have community centers, and if anybody out there is listening has been to Delavan Grider Community Center, you know what an inspiring, uplifting, engaging community center that is. That should be the sterling standard for community centers in the city. But I know of other community centers that don't have that same vitality. They're buildings that are managed and owned by the city of Buffalo, but don't have robust programming, don't have an active and engaged director or active engaged board.
But Delavan Grider is owned by the city as well.
It is. And that's my point, is that one is being used effectively, but we need to use the other spaces that we have effectively. We got to bolster the programs and the offerings of those resources. We also have to look at our public schools. We don't use public school buildings except for 8 to 9 months a year. We got to look at, when we're a city that's challenged financially, we have to look at all of our resources that are here now and try to maximize the capacity and the use of those resources first. And then when we've maxed that out, we have an opportunity to think about how we're going to build more. Okay. But first of all, we got to look at our human potential. We got to look at our building potential. We got to look at their vacant land potential. And we got to look at all these young people that are looking for an opportunity and to contribute in their neighborhood and help them be part of the solution. And right now, what we have is all of this underutilized space and capacity, and we need to leverage that to do the best for our city.
You know, on the education front, one of the things that has undermined us around education starts at the state level. The state has never invested like it should in education.
That's correct.
And we look at it now, look at the games they play. We hear the lottery say, oh, when you play in the lottery, you're contributing, providing more money to education. Well, it's not true. See, our state leaders don't tell us that when they get money from the lottery, let's say they get $6 million from the lottery. Well, the $6 million that they would originally have in their budget toward education, they draw back their money and take in the 6. So instead of that so-called enhancement the lottery for education? It's not, because whatever money they bring in, our state legislature pulls that money out back so they can use it for other things.
Right.
And what we need them to do, put their share in, and any money that comes from the lottery, put that in there. If they were doing that, then the funding that we would need in our schools would be there. And so in this moment, it's going to be a challenge to the state to really put up or shut up. They've already been sued once before for not putting in their fair share. And we don't need to go back there, but that's one of the problems. And we don't need another situation like the last mayor who takes money out of the education budget to use for the city purposes.
Yeah,
That's right.
It's like, and then they want to have some big say about it. So there's a lot to be covered there, and you guys just already talked about talking about some of the problems. But I just wanted to add that, and I did want to shut up and let y'all continue.
Well, I do think we touched on a couple of different topics, and there's probably other things you want to talk about, but we have to to make these changes for any candidate, they have to get in the office first, right? And I know you've been we were talking about petitioning. There are a couple things about that process that are different than what most people understand.
Right.
Like you can only sign one,
That's
right? Like you have to make sure you're really aware of the candidate that you're signing, right? A lot of our candidates sometimes are looking for even higher numbers than just 2,000 because there may be discrepancies and things of that nature. So can you maybe give the viewers or listeners some things they should just be cautious about or aware about of that petitioning process so that they do want to support you to get into this office, they don't accidentally make a mistake that doesn't allow them to?
Yeah, I'll get to those nuts and bolts things, but I think that a lot of what it comes down to, right, is a call to action, because a lot of the situations that we deal with right now in this electoral democratic process have come about because of the Democratic Party in particular, because that's what affects most of our voters here in the city of Buffalo, because we're almost 70% Democrats, playing with the rules and playing with the games to decrease involvement and participation in our electoral process. You shouldn't have to vote with your signature. You should be able to support as many candidates that you find to be reasonable for the ballot. But yes, to bring up a point, when you're petitioning, we got to get a minimum of 2,000 petitions to get on the Democratic ballot, and which means, and you can only sign one candidate's petition. So if you've already signed it numerous times, the only one that counts is the one that was signed first. So we date all of these petitions. So that's one of the things. It's also a short window of time. It's also in the bitter cold. You have a time when people don't want to come to the door. It's dark early. Half the petitioning, it was, we're in the dark at 6 o'clock, 6:30 at night, and those are some of the barriers that we're creating. We need people involved in the democratic process. We need people engaged. We're at a point now in our federal system where we have someone that has exploited the fact, right, that we haven't had systems that are really accountable to people for decades. Right? And we start to take back power by getting engaged in the process, by running for your local committee person. Those local committee people in the Democratic Party, they make the rules. They decide on the rules. They endorse the candidates. And if they're controlled by one person, which they largely are now, then that person sets the agenda. That person chooses the next mayor. That person, then moves people around like pawns on a chessboard into their best chosen place.